Okay, sorry, I have not been able to upload anything properly. I got sidetracked by life and other events that has been happening. But nevertheless, I decided to go on with posting many videos, even though there are not many viewers. That's because I'm going to use these videos for my own revision. Okay, so there is one more series of lectures that I'm planning with the public administration. But as of now, let's talk economics because that's what I read. I have read a lot of things. I read the entire chapter, but I couldn't make notes for all of them. But I thought I would just share whatever notes I have already made, because that way I would be able to revise whatever I have done. At the same time, you could also take help from it. Okay, so let's not waste more time. Let's start with evolution of Indian economy. Okay, that's the topic that I read. I took notes from the book Ramesh Singh. I hope you all know about that book. Okay, that's one of the best books that you can read for economics. So what's the background? Why are we studying this evolution? Okay, so during independence, there was a lot of structural distortions in the industry and agriculture. You know that the Britishers were deindustrializing India, and they were using India as a place for the source of raw materials, and at the same time a big market. So the British government was not even playing a marginal role in the development of the Indian masses. And half a century before independence, the entire world was having accelerated development. Industrial development that started with the Britain and then moved to other countries like Germany, France, Italy, Russia, whatever. So let's talk about drain of wealth. Okay, we all know what drain of wealth is, right? Like I said, raw material source and the market plus the taxes. All the money that are made in India, they are being spent in UK. Like unlike other rulers who came to India and started ruling, the UK were taking wealth from a country. At the same time, they were neglecting social sector. Apart from the Charter Act of 1813, in which they spent 1 lakh rupees for the Western education development in India. Other than that, I don't think there was any significant investment from the British side for the Indian development. Okay, so at the time of independence, the literacy rate was 17% with a 32.5 years life expectancy, and currently we have 80% literacy rate. Okay, and 70 years life expectancy. So we know at what state they left India to. So it's 17% literacy is also okay, but 32.5 years is life expectancy is unbearable, man, because by that standard I should die by another 8 years, die within another 8 years. Okay, whatever. So aggregate real output during the first half of the 20th century estimated at less than 2% of year or less. Okay, so it's not surprising. Okay, the aggregate real output, what do you get? All the British the British policies were against the Indian industries and villages. So with heavy taxation and all the ban and all the prohibition, I don't think you could make anything more than 2%. So it's not really surprising. Okay, so one of those people, Angus Madison, he said that there was no per capita growth in India from 1600 to 1870. Why have we taken 1600 as the base? I don't know. Maybe because Portuguese came in the 1500s, 1498. So 100 years other people started coming. The British East India Company, all that they came during this period only. And till 1870. Why 1870? Because 1857 is what the first war of independence happened, and 1858 with the Queen's proclamation, India came directly under the colonial rule. So until that time there was no real per capita growth income. So here I would not blame just the British. Okay, of course the British played a very important part with 1757 Battle of Plassey and 1764 Battle of Buxar. They took the region Bengal, Bihar and Orissa. All the income that they were taking, they were draining the wealth from that time only. But still, even before that, for centuries the Indian society has been on utter turmoil. Okay, with a few exceptions, like Tipu Sultan, and that also from 1700. Okay, so all the suppressions and all the supernatural belief and all the caste system, they were suppressing the real development. Okay, a lot of scientists, a lot of scientists, I don't think the scientists always come from the upper caste. So given that the lower caste people are not even involved, allowed to write and study, so I think the development of the country was actually going down the drain because of the Indians. But the British, they just accelerated it and they took it to, and they utilized it to their advantage. So that's why we are blaming them. So the Indian leaders already, they had 5 plans. Okay, even before the freedom, 1947, a decade before that, when the National Planning Committee was set up in 1938, even during that time, like at that time only, they already had a point like how they should run India after the British leave. So they said the responsibility of development should be with the government. because if you see here, I said the British government did not even play a marginal role in the development of the people. Okay, they neglected the social sector. So they said the Indian government that is being formed after independence will take care of the growth and development, and for that reason public sector should play important role. The heavy industries and all, they should be under public sector, so that the capital, enough capital can be infused into it and all that. So discouragement of foreign investment, I really did not find any reason, because like the book did not mention any reason, but what I think is, when you put foreign investment, like we can take the case of the northeastern states, where the planters, the British planters, they paid the Indian agriculturists, Indian farmers, to grow indigo and whatnot, and they extorted the crops from them for very a lower price, right? So maybe because of that, the fear of foreign investment was there, okay, and the need for economic planning. This is because socialism, the Soviet Union was there, okay. I'm not sure if they had any real development. Of course they had a lot of development, they went to space, they have amazing defense sector, but I think they were falsifying data to show that socialism was doing better, because we know the result, right? 1990 Soviet Union collapsed because of the system, but during 1947 and 1938, socialism was gaining very much importance and prominence in the Asian countries, especially in the colonies, because they wanted to have a feel of nationalism and they wanted their own government to take care of them, okay. And the evils of capitalism can already be seen through colonialism and the wars. Okay, so okay, I'm not saying that socialism does not contribute to war, but I'm just saying that capitalism was one of the major reasons why the war escalated to that much. With all the industries coming, defense industries, all that. With all the money that they were able to make, they wanted to colonize other countries to make them their market. So that's what all the colonial countries are about, right? India is the biggest market. All the other East Asian countries are all the markets of the Western countries. So yeah, capitalism is kind of to be blamed for all the colonial rules that is being happening. I'm not sure if any eminent personality said something related to capitalism and colonialism, but I remember reading somewhere. See, if I find it, I'll just let you know. The impact is present even in the present reform period. Okay, so yeah, because we can see all the public sector enterprises still working, right? BSNL, all the oil refineries, oil corporations, and now Air India. Okay, of course it was disinvested, but before that. So anyway, the prime moving force. So after the 1947 independence, the Indian leaders had two options. Okay, either to go with agriculture or industries as the prime moving force. So any natural attempt would have been to take agriculture and move forward with it, but there are some reasons why the Indian leaders chose to go with industries. So like I said, even before the setting up of National Planning Committee in 1938, they chose industry. Okay, so usually decided based on the availability of resources. If you see the availability of resources in India, we had unskilled labor and land, so naturally should go with agriculture, but they did not go with agriculture, they took industry. And there are certain drawbacks to this decision. Okay, I'm not saying that it is entirely wrong to have taken industry, because our leaders had their own reasons. Okay, before that, let us see why shouldn't they have taken industry. Almost no infrastructure sector, man. There was no power to all the houses, only certain government buildings had power. Transportation was not there at all, except for the railways that were used to transport troops and the goods to the ports, so that they can take it to England. And the communication, telegraph only for coordinating their army and for government purposes, right? The common man was not sending any message for business ideas and all that through telegram most of the times. Okay, there were not even entrepreneurs in our country. So absence of heavy industries and core industries. Okay, what are core industries? There are 8 core industries that IIP comes up with data every month about their expansion or their contraction. So let's talk about the core industries later. There are 8 core industries. I have not made notes for it, but we can talk about it. Okay, then there is lack of capital. The per capita income of India did not even grow from 1600 to 1870. We also have a data that says that the per capita income during 1899 was some 18 rupees, and then later it became to some 36 rupees, and the government did not have any forex reserves. So public and private sector did not have any capital. So how can you even start building industries if you don't have enough capital and absence of technology? Okay, even before the Britishers came, India started stagnating in technology because of all the caste system. A lot of people did not come into education and science and technology. There were very very few people, handful of people who were involved in that, and superstitions and religious philosophies were dominating. Okay, so philosophy was dominating science in India. Okay, so there was absence of technology, and even after the Britishers came, they did not even try to set up some research industries in India. They just wanted India for market and exploit it as much as possible. So we did not have technology, we did not have skilled manpower, because if there are no schools and colleges, obviously we will not have any skilled labors. and absence of entrepreneurship, because there were only handful of entrepreneurs like Tata and Vauvusi in Tamil Nadu, but they were always dependent on the English. Okay, they could not do anything on their own. Then there was an absence of market. Okay, why do I say India is a big country and there was market, but that's because the goods that were made in England were cheaper. But India is a case of absolute market failure. You know what market failure is? When there is demand and supply, but the people are not able to buy this because they did not have the purchasing power. Okay, so there is goods that are in demand, they are in supply, but you don't have the purchasing capacity to buy. That's called market failure. Because with 18 rupees or 36 rupees of per capita income, I don't think you can buy anything. Given that your life expectancy is 32.5 years, I don't think you will be spending on the car. Instead, you will be using it for saving your life in hospital. So why agriculture? Because we have fertile land and human capital didn't require any higher training, but still we decided to go with industries. So they thought that let us okay, you know what, before actually what happened in China, they got independence and they started working as a country in 1950s only, just like India 1947, China 1949. So they used agriculture to make profit, and in the 1970s, with all the money that they have made, they started investing it on the emerging industries. And soon after that, China became one of the leading industrial nations. So why did the Indian leaders choose industry instead of agriculture? Okay, so the Indian agriculture, they were using traditional tools. We did not use tractors or any sprinklers or combined harvesters, threshers, or even drones to do insecticides and stuff like that. So the upgradation was blocked by the lack of indigenous industrial support. So depending on foreign countries would mean that we will become slave to their ideas, just like we are now to Google, YouTube, and all that. Okay, irony, this video is going to be on YouTube anyway. And if you don't have any foreign reserves, you cannot import. Okay, nobody values Indian money as much as they value the dollar or any other mainstream currency. Okay, so I mean, I'm talking about the past, but right now also it's not the case. Dollar is the universal uh, currency. So we did not have enough foreign reserves. Why didn't we have? Because we were not able to make money. We were not able to make profit through industries. Okay, and at that time, IMF and World Bank, they said that industries are the means for faster growth and development. So Indians thought that okay, let us achieve faster growth through industries and then use that money to develop agriculture. So the IMF and World Bank, they were saying agriculture is something primitive. Okay, but in the 1990s they changed their stance. They said agriculture is not backward, you can use it to develop your country. That's because China has shown to the world that with agriculture as your prime moving force, you can develop and you can become equal to the Western nations. And in World War II, we saw the supremacy of defense power. The defense power can also be used for offensive as well as to save yourselves. Okay, so if you don't have any heavy industries, we can't save India. Okay, we just had partition, Pakistan, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, both, and we do not want to become a colony of any other country. So we wanted to move forward with science and technology, and should not be seen as a nation that is behind the Western country. So we wanted to develop industries. That's why they chose industry. And by the time of independence, the might of industrialization was already proved. We can see how Britain, they ruled the entire world because they were able to achieve industrial revolution before any other European countries or any other Asian countries for that matter, Russia. And in 2002, the world changed the perception. In the 1990s only, IMF changed, saying that agriculture is more than enough for developing a country. But why did India take another 10 years to decide that agriculture is a prime moving force? Okay, so what happened is in 2002, in our 10th 5-year plan, India said agriculture is the new prime moving force. We will achieve food security, and then we will export, we will make money, we will reduce poverty, and after that we will solve the Indian market failure issue. Because if there is no poverty, people will be able to buy stuff and they will be able to invest in other things, and that's why we have to move to the secondary and tertiary sector. But the reforms, no, it came very late. That's because the agriculture employs like around 50%. The 50% of the population of the country was dependent on agriculture. So if you make any small changes, it's going to affect a lot of people, and if it is negative, it's going to again collapse the economy. So that's why it was a bit late, and there was lack of awareness among the farming community. Okay, so first of all, any reform that comes to picture, if everyone is not able to understand why it's happening, and during the time when it is implemented, and if it takes time to reach the people, it's not going to have the required effect. For example, the Indian agriculture was fully private, right? And that means the government was not controlling farming. So every individual landowner was doing farming. So at the same time, if you want to improve more efficiency in your farming sector, you will have to do contract farming. So when there is not much awareness about contract farming among the small illiterate peasants, it would have been very difficult for them to bring in reforms. For example, like if you see the recent happening in our country, PepsiCo was trying to sue the farmers for using a potato that was related to their own, and the judgment came that no, there is no pattern. I mean, anyone can use the potato, so it's not the right of the companies to do so. That's because the farmers are able to fight the case on the court, right? Because they had awareness. But what if this happened in the 1947 with 17% literacy rate? I don't think the farmers would have been able to fight back and survive. That's one of the reasons why they did not go for the reforms as soon in the 1990s. The industrial sector needed expansion. Okay, so they had to move a lot of people from the farming to industrial because there were a lot of underemployment and disguised employment that is happening. So for that reason, they had to wait till a lot of people move from primary sector to secondary sector. And the major reforms needed in the phase of agriculture. Okay, that's what we are going to see. I did not include the notes, but it's very simple. Maybe I will finish the note by tomorrow morning or afternoon, and then I will record the video. If you have stayed till the end of this video, I am really thankful because for the last few days my mental health has been down the drain and I did not have any motivation to do anything. So I thought, why not make videos of all my notes so that I can use it for my own revision later if I'm not carrying my books anywhere, or if I just want to chill and relax and revise at the same time. And if you find it useful, please let me know in the comments. I have seen or some of you are actually watching the videos, even those 17 views or the 10 views that I'm getting, that's that's really great because that's how you build the channel. I really want to build the channel, and I want to put exhaustive notes for UPSC in this channel as soon as possible, because I'm going to attend the exam in 2022, right? The next exam, that's what I'm going to attend. But if I can cover all the notes within 3 months and put it on the website, on the channel, I think everybody can use it, right? So if you like the quality of the notes and the quality of the lectures, please let me know. I will share the PDF for free. I'm not going to charge you because this itself is taken from the book, right? So the book, the entire chapter of the book actually has 13 pages, and I was able to cover it in 2 pages in my notebook. So I'm gonna put it on digital notes, and then I will share it to you in the next video. And once the note is complete, I will put a link so that you can download the notes and read. I'm sure that you're not gonna listen to this lecture and take notes, because that's not how you do it. I'm not a teacher, I'm just a friend. So it's like you're sharing your friends' notes. Okay, so I hope the audio is clear, because I did not speak loud because the time is 2:43 a.m. I can't shout. My mother and sister are sleeping in the next room. Okay, thank you. Have a nice day.